Good evening. This podcast begins with the question, where do you live? So I ask you, where do you live? More explicitly or more pointedly, do you even know where you live? And you probably respond, of course I know where I live. I live in San Diego, California. And then someone else might say, I live in Washington, D.C. Well, it's very interesting that you say where you live, because every place you say you live has to do with this physical world. And no matter where you live at in this physical world, it's going to eventually disappear. So it wouldn't be a good idea for you to live there. Now, just because your physical body is there doesn't mean that you have to live there. Have you ever heard this statement that's in the Bible that says, be in the world but not of it? Well, that's a true statement, and it's very possible for you to be in the world but not of it. If you look at Joseph was in the world, and a lot of things happened to him that you might consider bad things, but he wasn't of the world. So he lived above it all. Job was in the world, but he wasn't of it. Jacob was in the world, but he wasn't of it. Many of the people in the Bible were in the world, but they weren't of it. You really don't have to live where your physical body is. Try something. Try living in your spirit. Just try it. Try living in your spirit so you can be stable and not have to worry about whether the old house is blown down. Let's suppose you had two houses. One of the houses was made out of kindling wood, and the other house was fireproofed. Which one would you mostly likely live in if they looked the same, but one was very susceptible to fire and the other was fireproof? Which one would you like to live in? Well, logically, you'd probably like to live in a fireproof home. Well, the same thing is true in our life now. And maybe you don't move to your fireproof home because it's possible that you don't even know it exists. Excuse me. But it does exist. And the place that it exists is in Christ. Now, in the 17th chapter of John, Jesus was praying to his Father. And he told his Father, the 12 that you have given me, he said, I have kept them all, save the son of perdition, which he was talking about Judas. He said, I have kept them all in your name. In other words, he kept them all living in God's name, not in the world. Now that thing is possible for you today. You don't have to live in the world. Your body just happens to be in the world. But you yourself, you could live in Christ. And if you were living in Christ, what happens around you simply wouldn't bother you. To put it as it says in the Bible, you'd have a peace and joy that surpasses all understanding. And you would. So I implore you today to give your life over to Jesus, live in Christ, and say poo-poo to the house of the flesh and blood. Now, don't take that wrong. Don't go out and kill yourself. What it means is that you give yourself over to Christ, and therefore you become in charge again, and you tell the body what to do, and what the body does won't bother you. As they say, try it. You'll like it. Good night.